know exactly how you feel. So if
Okay.
your homework is not ready tonight, it's okay. You can turn it in next week.
I stayed up half the night.
What about?
I stayed up half the night.
Well, if you want to turn it in, fine.
Yeah, he stayed up half the night to get it done, and then you tell him that it's okay if he didn't get it done.
I said if you don't have it ready. Then listen to the text.
Quit arguing, I got the computer going now.
Yeah. All right.
Question 3.
This is getting recorded. It's good arguing. It's fighting.
Yeah. Stop acting normal. Okay, somebody's got a very good paper here, but they didn't put their name on it.
Oh no!
It must not have been mine.
Hopeful.
No, you put your name on it.
It's nice, you know, make the teacher do some extra work to try to figure it out.
Right, Tim. Thank you, sir.
Oh yeah.
Let me hand those
How
two
was
papers
Sunday
over.
night?
All right, give that to yourself.
This isn't mine.
That's not yours?
No. It's probably mine, and it kind of looks like mine.
See if that's this.
Yep. It's got a name on it.
Somebody wrote a very good paper. Very good answers.
Here, I think it was mine then. Let me see.
No, I think that was mine. Yep.
Mine has my name on it.
Here's one
Well,
got
come on, I
Timothy
didn't
on
get
it.
a grade because I didn't have my name on it, I suppose.
Timothy. Okay. Somebody apparently doesn't want their A because there's no name on it.
That's mine too.
Oh, okay. Nothing personal.
That's the one I...
Mine is not the one with the F.
I don't have pretty blue ink. I put the regular standard blue ink.
Well, you write some mighty nice things there, standard blue ink. All right. All right. Miss Irene, by the week, I am more impressed with your grasp of this material. Keep it up. I think this is yours.
Yep, thank you.
Same with you, Mr. Brandon.
Oh yeah.
You see improvement every week. Okay. I think I might be yours or Candace. This is homework page.
It looks more like Timmy's, I think.
Somebody trying to hide their paper.
That's something else.
I think that's Timmy's. I got a 93. I didn't get no grade on one of them, so it must have flunked it.
Which one? You sure it wasn't page 2 of something?
No. Number 2.
I give it here and I'll get home and grade it. Oh. It's an A. I just forgot to mark it on there.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
Here's Irene's due tonight, I think.
Okay.
Oh, and I didn't know.
Very good. Very
What
good.
about the Dodsons?
They had a meeting that they had to go to.
Oh.
All right, that is the record button on.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Let's do this. Mr. Isaac, would you open the class in prayer, please? Stand up. Open the class in prayer and speak loudly. Amen. Very good. Okay. My name is Marvin Mayer. He's the critic I love to hate the most. I love him and I hate him. Is
there a song like that?
Something like that. Marvin Mayer. He thinks he's pretty. He loves his own voice. He adores his own intellect, and he loves to hear himself talk. Other than that, he likes himself. So, okay. You Christians, I love your ignorance. There's nowhere in the Bible that says that Jesus is a carpenter. Go ahead, show it to me. Show me in the Bible where it says Jesus was a carpenter. No. No Strong's Concordance.
Oh. Oh, good.
See, you can't even answer your own questions.
I didn't ask him.
I thought he was a plumber.
No, that's Joe. Joe the plumber. Now, I got to get this guy on down sometime, and y'all see it. I mean, this guy, you sit there and you're mesmerized by him, and after that you want to bark real good. Well, now get out of the concordances.
Yeah, that ain't fair.
That's not fair.
You said not Strong's Concordance.
Yeah, that ain't strong.
Maybe you should know a lawyer. Bend down. Get out of the
I
concordances.
haven't even found it yet.
All it is Jesus was the son of a carpenter.
No, that's not what I'm looking for. There's nowhere. My argument is there's nowhere in the Bible where it says Jesus is a carpenter.
I know that there was his accusers who said, "Isn't this," or the non-believers or something, "Isn't this the carpenter's son?" You know. But I'd have to look in my Strong's to find it.
And I'll burn it up. Where in the Bible does it say in the Bible that Jesus was a carpenter?
No.
He said that he's a master builder.
Now, Gordon's carpenter. Who says it's not? Who wants to vote that it's not in there? It pretty profoundly says Jesus is a carpenter. All right, we got these. Who wants to say that it is in there? It definitively says it. Oh, stop it. That Jesus is a carpenter.
You can't be right or you can't be wrong, though, either.
How many of you don't know? All right. All right. We're going to be looking at this again in third period tonight. Mark chapter 6 in your Bibles. Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6. We're going to start with verse 1. Mark chapter 6, verse 1. And he went out from thence and came into his own country. In other words, he's coming home. And his disciples followed him. Verse 2, Mark 6. And when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many hearing him were astonished, saying, From whence hath this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands? Is not this the carpenter?
But it doesn't say he is.
Is not this? He's in his own hometown. They know him.
Right.
He's in his own hometown. He's in Nazareth. And they know him. Many of these people, he grew up with him as a child. They knew him. They knew his dad. He's the carpenter. He ran the carpenter shop. The son of Mary, the brother of, now watch this, James, Joseph, Judah, and Simon. And are not these his sisters? Okay, after Jesus was born, Mary and Joseph had 4 sons, 3 daughters. And all 4 boys were 4 of the 12 original disciples. All 4 boys. At the end of verse 3, they were offended at him. And Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor, but in his own country, and among his own kin, in his own house. So he went home. He went to Nazareth to try to preach and to evangelize there. And all that they saw was that carpenter that grew up over in a carpenter shop. That's all that they saw. So, in answer to your question, Yes. It does say he was a carpenter. All right.
You know something I've always wondered?
What's that?
Like, what was his brothers and sisters' reaction to him growing up? I mean, were they like, man, there's something different about Jesus. He's not like us. He ain't sneaking around the back, shed or doing anything, doing some of the things.
Sneaking out back of school to the smoking block?
Right.
Okay.
He ain't doing that kind of stuff.
Y'all never did that, did you?
Not me. I knew better than to skip school.
I mean,
And I didn't smoke either.
Well, in answer to your question, what did they think? His 4 brothers were 4 of the original 12 disciples. He had a brother named James who wrote the book of James. And then, actually his brother's name was Judas, but after the little incident with Judas Iscariot, he changed his name to Jude. He's the one that wrote the book of Jude. So, apparently they were quite taken by him as they grew up. Maybe their mother explained to them what's going on.
Joseph is not his daddy.
Well, right, Joseph is not his daddy.
God is his daddy.
But we'll be back in the third period tonight. He had a brother named Joseph. And when we go to John chapter 2 tonight, that fact that he had a brother named Joseph is huge. It's real big. Matter of fact, it explains the marriage at Cana.
His family probably knew it growing up. It's kind of...
Well, if he knew at 12, surely Mary and Joseph knew when he was 12.
His brothers and sisters
Yeah.
knew that he might be the Messiah. Maybe.
Yeah, so whatever. Okay, we're in chapter 4 tonight, page 29 of our textbooks. Now, tonight, we're going to take a look at the writers of the Old Testament, just the writers. Who were these people? Who were these writers? And tonight, I want us to take a look at the gentleman that God used to write the Old Testament, because pretty much what you see of the Old Testament is pretty much what you're going to be seeing in the New Testament. These people were nobody special. There was nothing special about them. They all had their character flaws. For example, Moses, who wrote Genesis through Deuteronomy. Who knows some of his character flaws? What character flaws did Moses have?
Murderer.
Had what?
A murderer.
A murderer. Why? Why? What would drive him to it?
Well,
Okay. His character flaw was he had a killing temper. He had a hair-trigger temper.
and a speech impediment.
A very bad speech impediment. That's one reason why I can adapt to him. Sometimes I get a little hung up in fourth gear too. So anyway, he had a speech impediment. He had a killing temper. His temper actually drove him to commit murder. And here's something I want to throw out at you, just as a little what if. Moses is his Egyptian name. What's his Jewish name? Moses was a name that his foster mother gave him. What was his Jewish name?
It's T-O-R-A-H.
Hmm?
T-O-R-A-H.
Right, Torah.
Torah was his name?
No, it's different.
Oh, I was going to say, that's 5 books of the Old Testament. 5 books.
Okay. This is one time the Bible doesn't tell us. It never tells us what his Jewish name is. It never tells us what his mother named him. It's just, we know that his foster mother found him floating in the Nile River, there in the papyrus reeds. And it's so comical. It's so humorous how God works things. Now watch this. The reason she went down to the river was to bathe herself in the river, hoping to receive the ability to have a child. So she's down there bathing, hoping that this bath that she's taking, the gods will smile on her and give her the ability to have a child. And all of a sudden over in the reeds, she hears a baby crying. Hey, that's some God. Hey, that's pretty good. Not bad. And but the Bible also points out when she opens it up, she also knows it's one of the Jewish children. Well, he's mine now. So she takes him home. Now, what was Moses being groomed to be? A future Pharaoh. He was being groomed to be a future Pharaoh. Now, let's see how God thinks. Why would God want Moses to spend the first 40 years of his life learning to be a Pharaoh?
So he could talk to Pharaoh.
He knew the ins and outs of getting in and out of the court. He would learn that. A guy like me just wouldn't walk in and say, yo, won't talk to Pharaoh up there. I promise you I'd never say that again. Very, very quickly. So the first 40 years of his life was spent learning how to go in there and talk to Pharaoh. The next 40 years of his life, you would think, now watch this if you will. By human standards, Moses was a loser. Here he was living in Pharaoh's house, being groomed to be a Pharaoh, and all of a sudden, almost overnight, he's out in the middle of a desert for 40 years tending, stinking, dumb sheep. Now see, we would think, oh boy, what a step down for you. However, that second 40 years was getting him ready for the third 40 years. Here's what was happening. You'll notice where he went to tend sheep is the exact route he brought the children of Israel when he brought them out. God took him out there for 40 years so he would learn the terrain, learn his way around, especially learn where the watering holes are. You talk to boys who've been stationed in Iraq, they'll tell you can get up to 120, 130 degrees in the daytime there. You better know where the watering holes are. And he could take them to every single one. So what we're seeing here is Moses, by man's terminology, he wasn't all that great of a fella. But God turned it around to use it to his glory, to his honor. And sometimes we look at somebody and say they're not ministry material. What they're doing, I can't see it. I don't get it. I look at Billy Graham. He was shy, he was backward, he was awkward, he was gaunt, he was not socially apt. I mean, you name it, he just did not fit. And he was this lanky, gawky, gooky kid off a dairy farm in North Carolina. That's what people saw. God saw a great international evangelist. So when people talk about you, when you look in the mirror, you can't go by that. It's what God sees. Okay? Now, so page 29, we're talking about Moses here. He was one of the writers of the Old Testament. Now, I want you to notice, on the third line, I got some words here I want you to learn. See that word Pentateuch? Pentateuch, I know that's a weird way it's pronounced, but it's Pentateuch.
What third line?
On page 29,
Oh, down here.
under Moses, Pentateuch. That's another name for the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Pentateuch, spelled P-E-N-T-A-T-E-U-C-H. I'll spell that again. P-E-N-T-A-T-E-U-C-H. Pentateuch. That means the first 5 books of the Bible. Law of Moses is another name for the first 5 books of the Bible. Law of Moses. Now, the one that you'll hear the Jewish people use the most is the word Torah. T-O-R-A-H. T-O-R-A-H. But most of them are going to talk about the Torah. It's the first 5 books of the Bible. Now, especially guys who, don't get me started on this, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Guys who work with this thing called the Bible Code. They're constantly calling it the Torah. And so that's what they call it there, the Jewish rabbis. Now, I want us to go to page 30, and let's look at the prophetic line. The prophetic line. God provided tests by which prophets were to be judged in Deuteronomy 13 and 18. Let's talk about that for just a moment. Let's talk about that. Let's have some fun. In the Old Testament, a prophet would first give a short-term prophecy before he would give a long-term prophecy. Why? Why would he do that? Why was he required first to give a short-term prophecy?
See if he was right.
There you go. There you go. I mean, should a guy stand up? I'm prophesying that for 12 hours tomorrow the Nile's going to flow the other way, thus saith the Lord. All right, if it flowed the other way for 12 hours tomorrow, you might want to listen to the guy. But oh, if it didn't flow the other way, he was stoned. He would be stoned until dead. Now, you two have been in my class, so let's let them have some fun for just a second, okay? I'll let the rest of you have some fun. Did Jesus ever give, I can see Irene over now, she knows what's coming. Did Jesus ever give a short-term prophecy?
Yes.
Name one. We looked at one last week, Matthew 12:40. As Jonah was in the belly of the whale, 3 days and 3 nights, I'll be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, now, but that's one. I'll even give you a hint. Matthew 24. He gave a short-term prophecy in Matthew 24. In Matthew 24. Now, let me set up Matthew 24 for you. In chapter 23, Jesus just now verbally had it out with the religious authorities. He just now had it out with them. And I mean, it got intense. So when Matthew 24 starts, he's still pretty much stoked up. He still hasn't calmed down yet. And they're getting ready to cross over the Kidron Valley to go up to the Mount of Olives. And one of the disciples turned around and says, Jesus, have you ever looked at just how beautiful this temple is? And it was. It was a beautiful thing. What did Jesus say next?
See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down.
Okay, now, that's his short-term prophecy. What's he telling them? He's telling them, and my short-term prophecy is, that in your lifetime, you're going to see this temple completely dismantled to where there's not one stone left upon another. Now, why did he give them that short-term prophecy there? Because for the rest of chapter 24 and all of chapter 25, he's going to give them the long-term prophecy about the end of the church age, where we're at now. And he's got to let them know that what he's about to say is real. He's got to especially let John know that what he's saying is especially real, because John's going to be thinking about that when he's locked up on the Isle of Patmos with third-degree burns all over him, where they tried to execute him in a boiling pot of oil, and probably he sucked enough that oil down that it completely just destroyed his vocal cords. He might not be able to talk. I'll go as far as to say there's probably no hair on him. He would like to know if he's got to write this revelation after paying such a price that it's real. So, in AD 70, Jesus gives the prophecy in approximately AD 30. 40 years later, in AD 70, Titus of Rome rides in. He's in a foul mood. He's having a bad hair day. And he says, let's start by tearing down the temple. And they worked, and they worked, and they worked until every stone was torn down. Now, whenever somebody tells you that Bible prophecy is not real, let me tell you what happened. Here's how God works. Here's how God thinks. They just rolled the stones out on the grass. They just rolled them down the hill, just rolled them anywhere. It didn't matter. Where they landed is where they stopped. Where they landed is where they stopped. And 2,000 years later, on October the 2nd, in the year 2012, those stones are still laying there just like they were the day they were torn down. They never cleaned them up.
Did they ever let people take any of them home?
Well, when you're talking about a solid stone about the size of one of these folding tables,
Oh, okay.
you might have a luggage problem. But if you even as much as chip off a chip to take home with you, and they catch you, you won't leave the country. They're very particular because they've got too many people trying to bring little pieces of Israel home with them. But these years later, those stones are still laying there, just like they fell in AD 70, and nobody cleaned them up, which is Jesus' way of saying, I told you so, and I'm coming back. So when somebody says, I don't think I have, that's their problem. Okay, let's take a look at something here. On page 31, and we're just going to kind of hopscotch through it. Let's look halfway down the page at Job. Job. In the Bible, Job is the first book that was written. Out of the 66 books of the Bible, Job was the first one to be written. Now let's read this paragraph here about Job. Job presents special considerations. Conservative scholars believe that it is quite old, possibly before Moses. It is argued that Job does not mention tabernacle worship. Instead, Job sacrificed at his son's house, much as Abraham offered private sacrifices. Other scholars have placed Job quite late. Their argument is based on its style and its theology. There are the same arguments often given for the lateness of other books, which the Bible specifically calls early. We cannot accept the arguments for its extreme lateness. Now, I'm going to say it's very old because, just like they said here, his system of worship was that of Adam through Abraham. Adam through Abraham. They would take stones, they'd build an altar. There was to be no mortar used. The stones were not to be hewn. You take the stones, you build an altar, and then you slay the lamb and put the lamb on it. And this is how it was done through this period here. Okay, now let's go down to the next paragraph. David, about 1000 BC, is the chief author of the Psalms. Asaph and other authors are referred to as prophets of God in 1 Chronicles. Now, what they're doing here is that they're lining up under the paragraph of David. They're starting to line up how that the prophetic books came about. Now, listen to me. We looked at it last week. Israel had not observed the sabbatical year for 490 years. They owed God 70 years. All right, along comes the prophets. Along comes Isaiah. Along comes Ezekiel. Along comes Daniel. Along comes the other prophets, especially the prophet Amos. That poor guy, out of all of them, he had the worst. God told him to go out on the street, find a woman of ill fame, marry her, and take her home. And she continued her line of work, even though she was a married woman. And God said, now this is what I want you to write, Amos. I want you to write that she reminds me of Israel. I love her. I want to take her home. I want to care for her. And what is she doing? She is rebelling against me. Just like this woman here does to you. They owed God 70 years, and they got stubborn, they got proud, they got heady, haughty, and high-minded. And finally one morning, in Daniel chapter 1, they wake up, and Jerusalem is surrounded by the Babylonians. Listen, when God wants to judge a nation, He uses their worst enemies. And in September 11, 2001, God let us know that Islam is our worst enemies. Islam calls us the great Satan. Islam has said that when we want to attack Israel, you'll be able to know, because we want to kill the great Satan, the little Satan, and then attack Israel. And we're the great Satan. Great Britain is the little Satan. And then they attack Israel. Their plan is, and they don't mind us knowing it, that they want to attack us first before they attack Israel. So they'll have us out of the way. Whenever God wants to judge a nation, He uses their worst enemies to do it. And it's how he's been doing things ever since Genesis 1:1. Now, so you'll see here under the David paragraph that God used many great prophets. Now the next paragraph, Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon. And most of the Proverbs, it is now possible to place Solomon's reign from about 960 to 920 BC, and archaeology discoveries have shown Solomon's reign to be the time of Israel's greatest material success. Under his leadership, the worship of God at the new temple was established and furthered. Now, I want to stop here and I want to point something out to you. Under David, when David was the king, is the only time Israel has had all of their land. It's the only time. Israel will get it back, but God's got to get it back for them. And that'll be during the millennial reign of Christ. But someday when Israel has all of their land, it's going to be all of the land of Israel, half of the Saudi Peninsula, Syria, Damascus, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, and Egypt is theirs. And they did have it for a little while under David. Now David was going to pass away. He wanted to make sure Solomon got the throne, because Solomon was like an academic. He was a very academic person. He's the kind of guy that you see at the symphony, the ballet, the opera, the chamber music society. His other brothers were rough, tough, tumble soldiers. And David knew that if he died and Solomon was supposed to be next in line, they would kill him. So David actually put Solomon on the throne just before he died, to make sure he was on the throne. It was during Solomon's reign that Israel had the most prosperous years of their history. But what was their downfall? Their downfall was their leader, Solomon. Before he died, he had 700 wives and 300 girlfriends. Now, can you imagine Valentine's Day?
They didn't have Valentine's Day back then.
Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. Anyway, I mean, whoa. Trying to keep those birthdays straight. But he did. He had 700 wives and 300 girlfriends. So we turn the page. Ecclesiastes, which is one of the books of wisdom written by Solomon on page 32. So he also wrote Ecclesiastes. He wrote Solomon's Song of Songs. His Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon's, is a love poem. So out of those 700 wives and 300 girlfriends, there must have been one that stood out. How? But anyway, he wrote her a nice poem there. Okay, now, on page 33. On page 33, this is how the Old Testament splits out. You got the 5 books of the law. After that, you got the 12 books of history. You got 5 books of poetry, 5 major prophets, and 12 minor prophets. Now, this is where a lot of people go wrong. They think the minor prophets are unimportant. No, they are very important. For example, Micah is considered a minor prophet. What prophecy does Micah give us that is so significant to the person of Christ? Does anybody know? Yes.
Micah 5:2.
Which was a prophecy about?
Where Jesus would be born in Bethlehem of Judea.
Okay. Why? Because there's also a Bethlehem in Galilee. There's a 1-hour documentary on TV that they show occasionally, and I had to turn it. I can't stand it. This supposed expert of theology says, well, there's 2 Bethlehems in Israel, and we just can't know which one is which. And his name isn't even Marvin Mayer. But anyway, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, you guys, please, read a Bible. Do you good? Okay, now I want us to turn the page because in our time remaining here in class tonight, there are some things I want to address. The Apocrypha. Has anybody here ever read the Apocrypha?
Never heard of it.
Okay.
I've heard of it. Can't remember what it is, but
It's in the Catholic Bible. The Catholics feel it's inspired. The Apocrypha is supposed to cover the period of history from Malachi to Matthew. It's supposed to be the gap filler there. However, here are some problems I have with the Apocrypha books. The Apocrypha, seven other complete books and a few additions are included in the Roman Catholic Bibles. These editions are called the Apocrypha. A study of their origin will show why Protestants do not include them. Things are weird. Alright. The Apocryphal books were evidently written during the period between the Old and New Testaments. Only one is dated. Two books, Judith and Tobit, tell of the Assyrian and Babylonian invasions. Two more, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, record the Jewish War of Independence at about 165 BC. Two more are books of wisdom, Ecclesiastes and the Wisdom of Solomon. No, Ecclesiasticus, and the Wisdom of Solomon. One is an addendum to Jeremiah. There are also other additions to Esther and Daniel. In the Apocrypha, they put an addition to Esther and to Daniel, which is something I was not too crazy about. And then I want you to go down to the next paragraph. Several other books written during this period are not accepted by either the Romans or the Protestant. There are such books as Enoch and Jubilees and Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. Fragments of these found among the Dead Sea Scrolls were not received nor quoted as Scripture. They are of some value but have never been in the canon. In other words, you might be able to pick up some history, but we never did put them in our Bibles. Now, here's something I want to talk about next. It's Josephus, the Jewish historian. I have his book. It's about like this. And supposedly, Josephus was a historian at about the time of Christ. And that he saw many of the things that we talk about here from a historical point of view. The problem is, his writings are very, very thick. His writings are kind of hard to understand. It's the type of writings where I read the paragraph and look at it, and I wonder what I just now read. 36, page 36. And I want to spend a little time here. Who can tell me about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Who knows the historical? Let's deal with the history first. The Dead Sea Scrolls. Yes.
I know that they brought them on a tour around the country one day.
Okay. How were they found?
Somebody like throwing a rock or something and heard something break and they went and found it.
1948, a little shepherd boy thought he had a sheep, a goat, a ram, whatever, and wandered into a cave. And he picked up a rock and threw it into the cave and heard some crockery jars break. And they went in there and they found what had broken, and they were a mess. They were an absolute mess. And long story short, some archaeologists saw them. They got a hold of them and took them to a university in California and started piece by piece taking it apart. And I think it was something like 19,000 little pieces of parchment jigsaw that they had to put together. But they did put it together, and it was successful. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls covers every book of the Bible, every book of the Old Testament, except Esther. They can't find Esther. However, all of the other books of the Old Testament are there. And it confirms the Old Testament as far back as 400 BC. It confirms it. Now, we're not saying Dead Sea Scrolls are divine inspiration. But look at the first paragraph there. The Dead Sea Scrolls supply further confirmation. Now, it's like this. I don't have to have these things to know that this book is real. I don't have to have them. But it's nice to have. It's kind of like, I don't need that extra 5 gallons of gas, but it's nice to know it's back there in the truck.
Are the Dead Sea Scrolls like a history book?
Dead Sea Scrolls are scriptures, and then they found other scrolls that deal with the history of that area. They found other scrolls that deal with, they found some recipes. And they found a little bit of everything, but what they found that really stands out is the Old Testament, except for Esther. Now, in Jerusalem, or Tel Aviv, it's in Israel, they have actually built a museum where that the Dead Sea Scrolls are there on display. The actual scrolls themselves are on display if you want to go over and see them. And I like to go see them before it gets blown to bits over there. I like to see them. But they're on display in Israel, and you can actually go see them. And they built a very beautiful museum for them. But like I said, it took... where? It's in the Judean desert, at a little community called Qumran. And you can still go there now and go inside the caves. They haven't even blocked off the caves. It's just that the lay of the land is that you're on your own if you want to get in those caves, because the rocks are slippery and it's a long ways down. But these Essene, I guess you want to call them monks, lived there, and that they wrote the Old Testament scriptures, and they confirmed it. And when scientists and theologians went back and looked at them, they're 100% accurate.
So they're like copies of the original.
They're copies of the original, but that tells us as far back as 400 BC that the Old Testament is accurate. All right, then you got Jesus who comes along and quotes from it. Book after book after book, he quotes from it. And yet people still want to argue about it.
They're not like copies made, like Library of Alexandria type copies.
Oh, I wish Caesar had done that. You know how it burned down, don't you? You ever heard we're going to burn our bridges? Caesar arrived there with his troops. They was going to take Egypt, and that settled it. So to show a demonstration of we're here to stay, he ordered all the ships burned in the harbor. And that library was real close. It caught fire. And everything was gone. And I would have loved to just go in there and look through those scrolls and everything. They're gone. They built a new one, but it's not like the old one. So the library at Alexandria.
But isn't it true that they copied, like I think what Christina is asking is, like they had to copy down the scriptures from time to time because they would get so old and worn.
Exactly. And they get old and worn, and they would make copies. However, what we do know, and we know this is a fact, that the scribes at Qumran took great, great pride in detail. Because one of the reasons why I had to drop Hebrew, I looked at a jot and I looked at a tittle and I couldn't tell the difference. And I'm thinking to myself, I know those.
Same thing.
Same thing. And the first time I opened up a Hebrew Old Testament, looked at it, I thought to myself, somebody put a chicken in a ball of ink and turned them loose on the paper, and that's what we got there.
Okay.
All right.
Oh my.
Can I turn this into a study hall?
How many letters are in the Hebrew alphabet? Are there more than 26, or?
We've got 26. Greek's got 24. I used to know that.
Is it like in the hundreds or something?
No. It's about like ours.
Oh, okay.
Oh. Go to Psalms 119. Go to Psalms 119. Hold on. I can answer that for you in just a second. All right, now in Psalms 119, do you see Alf, Beth, Gamel, Deleth, Hey, Vav? Those are the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 20, 21, 22. I count 22. 22? Okay. So it's 22 in theirs, 24 in the Greek, and 26 in ours. I did pretty good in Greek because theirs is a whole lot like ours. Their alphabet's a whole lot like ours. Now, another thing that confused me about the Hebrew Bible is that, let's say I'm going to read it. All right, so if we're going to read it, we hold it like this, right? Not from left to right, not theirs. You turn around this way. And you start back here. And you go this way. And you go, instead we go from left to right, they go from right to left.
Oh, okay.
And so, I'm sorry guys, I wussed out. Okay, very quickly here on the Septuagint on page 36. Now, the Septuagint, it's very easy. You don't have to make it hard. The Septuagint, and this is something that I use. I use this Septuagint from time to time. The Septuagint.
Where you at?
36. See there? Septuagint.
Oh, okay.
The Septuagint is the Hebrew Old Testament translated into the Greek language. The Septuagint is the Hebrew Old Testament translated into the Greek language. And they make sure it's very, very accurate. And every theologian I've ever known has found it very accurate. And even from time to time, I'll use it. And I try to get my Hebrew in as close as I can. And sometimes that's not much.
Okay, now repeat that again.
The Septuagint
Okay.
is a Hebrew Bible translated into the Greek language. Okay? All right. We're going to take a break here just before we do. Page 37, your favorite page. Okay, vocabulary. You got Pentateuch, Septuagint, Torah. Do all three of them. Discussion questions. 2, 3, 7, 8. Okay, Brandon, that's 2, 3, 7, and 8.
2, 3, 7, and
2, 3, 7, and 8. 2, 3, 7, and 8.
Timmy, 2, 3, 7, and 8.
Timmy, 2, 3, 7, and 8. All right.
So we're done with this one?
We're done. We're going to take a break here.
Okay.